Hello, everyone watching and everyone on the panel. Also, so good to see you. And yeah, let me do a quick introduction and we can get straight into it. So I'm Pranay Patwardhan, illustrator and animation filmmaker. I'm creative director and I'm based out of New Delhi, India. I had films myself at NFFTY in 2013 and 14. And after that, I've been on the alumni advisory board ever since then. And I've met made some very good friends and met some really good people here. And one of those who I'll pass it on to next is Omar. But I think, yeah, you want to introduce yourself and we'll take it from there.
So is Dennis going to introduce himself first?
Yeah, Dennis, you can go.
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Dennis Kim. I'm also an animator. I have had films in 2016, 2017, and 2019. Also part of the alumni advisory board. And I come from South Korea. That's also where I am at the moment. And because I've studied overseas, I've been studying in the States for a very long time, and I'm still going to the university in the United States. And through those kind of experiences, I have been able to participate in NFFTY and find out about NFFTY, and so yeah, I guess and I'm really excited to be here to be able to talk about, I guess, like filmmaking and films in an international context and also like in relations to the United States. So yeah. I'm supposed to pass it off to someone else. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So my name is Omar A Rashed. I was involved in NFFTY 2012, 13, and 14. I started out doing shorts, both directing and producing. And since 2015, I've been more involved into both commercial and creative directing. My passion for film is still very strong, but I just thought that commercial industry was a very quick-paced learning industry. So that's why I just decided that I want to go into doing commercials just to focus on the learning experience, and then I'll get back to doing films
again. Yeah, Giulia, you can go next.
Oh, sure. Hi, everyone. So I was part of NFFTY 2018 and 2019. I'm a writer-director that works between London in the UK and Rome in Italy. I'm originally from Italy, but I've been studying and starting my career in the UK. And I mainly work in commercials in the UK for now, even if the dream is to eventually transition to TV and film. And I've just wrapped a TV series that I directed back in Italy.
Okay, I guess I'll go last. So hey, I'm William Boyd. I am a Nigerian filmmaker. I'm currently living in London. I was in NFFTY 2018. I work between London and Nigeria, Lagos. I kind of do more commercial work and content in Nigeria, and doing my short films and fiction and developing the feature here in the UK.
Perfect. I think let's jump into the conversation now. So
short and concise.
Yeah. So NFFTY and filmmaking in a way is how we're all connected to each other. And just like to know from everyone how filmmaking has influenced your worldview and just how it's connected you to people and cultures and just places around the world. And anyone can go.
I'll go. So I grew up from baby to late teenage years in Nigeria, and it's very different in Africa compared to, I guess, the Western world. I mean, in some aspects, I'm guessing in most places, like it's like you should either be a doctor, a lawyer, or like an engineer. It's like that's the safety. But in Nigeria, it's very strict. That's all you're going to be. So films were kind of the thing that like my escape from just, I guess, being a child in general. you know, seeing all these Western movies, all these different worlds and stuff. And when I came here for my to England for my A levels in university, I kind of realized that, oh, human beings actually make movies. You know, that's a job. You can actually get money from it. And that's kind of when I was like, you know what, I kind of want to expand. It expanded my understanding of like what you can do with your life, and it like took me down a path that that is different from the norm of, I guess, the people that I grew up with and that I kind of know. So filmmaking in that aspect gave me a very different point of view on life than those around me and just people, I guess, I grew up with in general.
I share a similar experience to Will, I think, to a certain extent. Like the place where I'm from in Italy, it's a small provincial town. It's nowhere close to the capital like Rome. And so filmmaking for me growing up was never perceived as a possible career path. And it's not something that I have in the family either. So I've always had a passion for films, but I never actually knew that I could have had a career in filmmaking. And so I think growing up, I always had this confusion of like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to become until I had the opportunity to move to London to study. And I saw people making short films and I was like, what's this? That's what I want to do. And so for me, I guess, I needed to move outside of my hometown and outside of my country and my culture to actually discover what filmmaking is.
Well, I mean, I guess the three of us sort of share the same thing. I grew up because in Egypt, it's similar to Nigeria. I grew up, the only options that I was given to grow up doing for work were either being an engineer of any sort or a doctor. And I actually did study architecture. And midway, I felt that I really hate this. I really hate this, doing architecture. I hate studying architecture. I don't like it in any way. So throughout my years in school, it was, I think by my fourth year, it was when I discovered that I actually want to do film. It took me a really long time to figure out what I wanted to do. But eventually at the end, once I figured out that, people could actually do film for a living, I was like, sign me up. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, also for me, so I'm a 90s kid. So India was growing, the internet was exploding, we were getting access to music, just pop culture, everything. And filmmaking just accelerated that curiosity. So now I was here with people around me which had similar ideas and similar stories, but their identities and they were just so diverse from where they came. And that really shaped my ideas, both culturally, politically, from all across the globe. And I guess some of the best collaboration or the best work has come from that.
Yes, I mean, if I were to kind of just like talk about myself too, but it's like, I guess, just, film. I mean, just like I was part of a generation where it's just like, we are all part of a generation when we're growing up and you're just kind of exposed to so many different like forms of media and also just, movies and just being as a kid and also just being taken to the movies a lot because, your parents needed to find some way of distracting you from everything else or just like, some form of distraction as a kid. But also like, I think in terms of like how like filmmaking could kind of just like influence like filmmaking or just like how cinema has like influenced my worldview in terms of it's kind of surprising how I guess in just in context of like South Korean culture it can be quite conservative in terms of its political beliefs, largely due to its the country's history with neighboring ones like the US, well not neighboring but like its history with the US, China and Japan, the wars that it's been involved in or even with its like complicated relationship with North Korea, that's been kind of like a byproduct in that sense. But one thing that I do know is that South Koreans like really, really love movies. and they are just like heavy consumers of narrative media, whether it might be produced locally or internationally from the US. And I think, so whether it is, I guess like forms of representation that they're not necessarily, or just like general audiences might not be particularly used to, such as whether that may be films that might represent the LGBT community or documentaries of certain real life crises around the world. I think it's like people hopefully can become exposed to these different ways of thought or lives, and hopefully this could leave like greater room for dialogue or greater space for disruption, if that makes into, as it certainly has been the case for myself. I think just being able to participate in these festivals, and like I think filmmaking just really opens up your mind to a lot of because I think it's an essential component is empathy. I think so. And it's just, a basic necessity if you're trying to tell a story, I think. But, I don't know, just also like, even like the South Korean, like K-dramas or that kind of stuff is also like smuggled and sold at a high price in North Korea, which I think is like, that in itself is saying something. So I think that just kind of went up a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, that was insightful though. We have a question for Giulia and William. Someone would love to hear how film, TV, and commercial is different in the UK as opposed to the US. And they're really interested in living in the UK and joining that market. So if you could tell us.
I think, Will, you might have a bit more of an insight on this one, just because I know the UK market, but not really the US one. I've never worked in the US as a filmmaker. Okay,
cool. Time for some brutal honesty. So the UK is fun, but very, it's not as loose and free as America. In America, you have a lot going on just because of the size. In the UK, it's smaller, so the distribution of power, and by power I mean money and what gets made, is in less hands. And as you can imagine, that means that it's not as easy anywhere, but it's not as easy to really penetrate and get yourself out there as it would be in America. With that said, there is still a lot of opportunity because since it is a smaller country, there are less people here. So there's good and bad in that. And it's nice. It's nice working here and living here. You meet, because it's small, you get an intimate relationship with a lot of people. Like, you're normally maybe one degree separated from anyone you meet, or maybe two. So it's nice in that regard. But if you really want to know the difference between America and the UK, it is size. And also, just anyone who's interested in coming over to the UK, people can tend to be a bit stringent here. They have the way they like things, the way they've been doing things, and they are stuck into that. It's like, this is what we do. If you can come in and deliver, you can get some work, as long as we like you. Pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Julie? How's your experience been? I know you did some stuff with the BFI, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't. So I've never experienced the US from a filmmaker's perspective. Like, I've been to festivals, but I've never actively worked in the US as a filmmaker. I think what you were saying about size in the UK is interesting, even in comparison to Italy, for example, now that I'm working between the two markets. I think the UK has a very good mix of opportunities and exciting projects that you can pitch for as a director or get attached to as a director. But also the competition, there is competition, but you still get a chance to get in the room when you're up and coming. It's about meeting, obviously, the right people at the right time, and that applies everywhere. But I feel like, I don't know, I'm almost a bit not intimidated, but a market as big as the one in the US, I wouldn't know where to start from, in a sense. There are so many people that are within your age range that are up and coming and doing the same kind of content that you do. I feel like in the UK, there's a bit less. it's basically the being a big fish in a small pond, or being a small fish in a big pond kind of visual imaginary.
I think from that we can jump to the global context of how your origin actually empowers you to tell the stories that you do, and also if in any way you feel marginalized in the global context, or any challenges that you face being like a filmmaker from a different country.
I mean, for me, it's I'm very proud of where I come from. I'm very close to my Italian origins. I just one of the reasons why I moved to the UK was that for example, my gender and age wouldn't have allowed me back in Italy to build a career in directing as easily as it was in the UK. And that's simply because Italy has a very different culture, very different approach to the industry. You know, a young director back in Italy that works in film and television, for example, is usually over 30. There's very little independent filmmaking. So I think I am deeply rooted to my origin and my country when it comes to stylistic choices and inspiration. You know, I love the film and cinema history of Italy. That said, I'm glad that I didn't start my career there, because I don't think I would be here with you guys, and I don't think I would have had my film screening at NFFTY or anywhere else for at least another 5 to 10 years.
You'd have aged up by then, sadly.
And you feel that even in the present day, right? Like the culture and just the way that you're talking about it, it's still prevalent.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's just I don't know. I feel I don't know. I'm not gonna go into the whole you know, Me Too conversation and the historical and cultural reasons as to why, blah blah. But there are still obstacles back in my home country that I haven't felt as strongly in the UK. So I think for me, being able to move to a different country and just being accepted to an extent into the industry there, and being able to still tell stories that are, you know, personal to me, but at the same time making them in English with an international audience and appeal. Yeah, for me that was just like priceless. It was great.
I think just going off of that, it's like international filmmakers in a way. Like I think from the beginning, it's like, yeah, kind of have to make a decision. Like, first of all, like you obviously are constantly conscious of like where you're from, and also just constantly conscious of the kind of story that you're gonna be willing to tell. And it's like, how are you gonna tell it? Well, first of all, are you gonna tell it in English, which is like, or just like another similar language which might be prevalently spoken around the world, or will you be telling it in your native language, or just like the language that of the country that you're originally from. And I think but just like, so in terms of like on a just like theoretical level of just making the film, that's like consciously, I think that's like something that particularly affected me. I'm sure it's all affected you as well when you're starting off like making a film, there's that. But it's like, yeah, I think just also going off of what Giulia was saying about the kind of culture, like filmmaking culture, which might be kind of like, it's kind of like, I'll just instantly remind of what it's like in South Korea as well, in a way, because like a lot of, if you're kind of familiar with like Japanese cinema history, like a lot of, it's very hierarchical in terms of like how directors are, they rise from the bottom in the industry and then kind of just like have to work their way up for maybe like 10, 20 years. And then eventually maybe they'll get an opportunity. And it's like, and a lot of that is also kind of like, so South Korean like filmmaking industry is like a mixture of like the US and like Japan, which is interesting, I think, on its own. But I'm also coming from an animation background, so I can't say a whole lot. But it's, I think, there's the kind of limitations, and it's like, and obviously if you're like a NFFTY filmmaker, you've had that opportunity to be able to kind of create and tell your story. And I think yeah, I also kind of find it to be a personal, like, huge privilege to have been able to tell my story, or just like tell a version of the story that I want to tell, and at this particular age as well. Yeah, if anyone has like any 2 cents on kind of just what I threw out there.
Like, it's very interesting hearing that take of like how the industry is in South Korea and kind of like Japan as well. Because, ooh, baby, Nigeria is the Wild West. Like, whoo! I'll let you know, like, up until very recently, the mentality was quantity over quality. Like, we kind of had a thing where like Nollywood, which is the Nigerian film industry, is kind of the amount of money they make is kind of along the same levels as like Hollywood and Bollywood. I think we're like about third. And one of the reasons for that is because quantity over quality. You would have movies from writing to sending it out on DVD, which takes years in America, about like 3 weeks in Nigeria. You know, that's it. You know, you shoot a feature film in a week, you're good.
Wow.
And
it's almost like a 48-hour marathon kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, legit. You know, it's like you're filming on the street. You need a kid. You're like, oi, child, come here. Stand here. Give this guy this thing. We'll give you a lollipop. Okay, good. You're done. Go off to your mother. All right, let's move. That's kind of the way it is, you know. You just do what you do. Why build a set where you can just find a house that looks like what you want and just go shoot there? So in that sense, it's very easy to penetrate. You know, my sister, she started as an art director with no experience. She had a master's in business, you know, and now, like about 2 years later, she is, because of her skill, but also just because of how easy it is to penetrate into the market, she's one of, if not the most sought after art director in the country. And it's kind of like that. But because of people like her, because of this new generation of filmmakers who have studied abroad and come back, you are now getting a lot of films where they are being taken more time with, and the quality is better. And Netflix is also investing very heavily in Nigeria and in lots of places, but especially Nigeria, because like Nigeria is the financial and media and entertainment center of Africa, you know. So it's going through like a evolution that's very interesting, and you're getting a lot of new voices. And even with something like Black Panther, you know, Black Panther kind of brought the rest of the world into like, oh, I like this African vibe, you know. So that's one of the reasons why, you know, like Netflix is investing. So I know in the next couple of years, you're going to see quite a bit of that African sauce in your filmmaking, in the films you see, basically. So
I definitely totally like. It's interesting. Yeah, it's like, well, aside from like Black Panther, but like Netflix has, I think, brought like a total like, it's really brought like international film, or just like international media like together in a way. And it's like, for example, there's a really, I haven't finished it, or I've kind of just scratched the surface of it, but like series called Dark, and I think it's come from Germany, I think. Is it, am I right? Yeah, but it's like, I think it's like Netflix. It's like the first like German TV show that I've ever seen. But also, you know, there are like South Korean like K-dramas on Netflix. There are, you know, Korean movies on Netflix, and it's like, and also it's, so Netflix has been producing like these like localized content for like, you know, like there's a giant billboard in South Korea, like in Gangnam Station, which is kind of like the Times Square in Korea. But there's like a huge billboard that's like is dedicated to Netflix, and it's like, you know, advertising their content like 24/7. And so it's like they're kind of creating, you know, they're supporting or just like funding projects for like things that are produced in South Korea or just like elsewhere, or, you know, all these different countries. But it's also being, you know, shown to audiences all around the world, I think, which is kind of like really, really interesting.
Yeah, I think streaming has changed the access so much. Like even for Indian content or anywhere around the world, we have access to so much of that. Like so much of Indian regional content and directors are coming up just because of that. Yeah. And to talk about the experience, for me, it's quite a contrasting point of view, because on like a world scale, I am from this smaller Asian or Indian kind of community. But here back in India, I'm part of the majority of the population. So I live here and I work here all the time. So there's those two really contrasting ideas that I have to deal with almost, and that's part of my experience. In a way that defines how I make film and how I work, right? So even growing up, I had this lens of almost a limited viewpoint where you're unconscious and you're ignoring a few things around you, like just the gender bias or the racial, religious inequality, and these things are relevant in society. And I think it's only when you move away from that majority perspective and you look at what's happening, it gives you a better idea and a better understanding of what's happening. And I think makes us all better filmmakers. I think there is a lot of positive change happening here as a nation, but again, a long way to go for us. Yeah, and completely agree with William's point as well. Like the whole DIY or the street smart kind of nature of getting into film. That's such an Indian mentality also. Yeah. Like you see the mainstream and the refined content that we have, like the big films and the blockbusters that make like millions. But then there's people doing all these crazy kind of things. We actually have a word for it. It's called jugaad, right? Which means that you come up with this innovation which is cheap, quick, and effective. Like, and it's the way out. Like, it's the street smart way out of things. And so many sets and so many things, just like you mentioned, right? Like, there's a house, there's a kid, we go and shoot there. Like, what's the problem here? We make a film, right?
Yeah,
it's just about that. It's about that spirit, yeah. Just going out there and getting it done, yeah.
I think this is all very interesting to hear, because in Egypt, it's sort of like the opposite. It's the opposite thing in Egypt, because in Egypt, back in the 60s and the 70s, we started out as the hub of the cinema in the Middle East. If anybody wanted to do any kind of films in the Middle East, Egypt was the place. We had actors that would be on juries in festivals like Cannes and all the major film festivals. But as, you know, like getting into that, like the 90s and the 2000s, like with the other Arab nations starting to learn what cinema is, and because like the Gulf countries, for example, having money and they wanting to focus on like doing cinema as well and just being on the same pace as the Egyptian cinema, this has sort of like made sort of like a recession in the cinema that we have in Egypt and the content that you kind of watch. So for example, like growing up, we'd have at least 30 to 50 films that you can see in cinema throughout the year. And they're really, really good films. Right now, like in the past 5 years, for example, I think like this number reclined to having 10 films made per year. And all the filmmakers in Egypt are mostly focusing on doing either advertising or getting into TV shows, because like we have a month in Egypt, which is called, it's in all the Arab countries. It's called Ramadan. And this is sort of like the season where, you know, where you can watch all these TV shows. So you have 30 days. And they don't just make like any normal episode. Like all the episodes that you see on Netflix are, for example, 12 to 13 episodes per season, or like you would see a show in the States being 24 episodes that is made throughout the year. But in Egypt, like it's hardcore. You have 30 episodes that you watch in 30 days in a row.
Damn, that's impressive.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know this aspect to the Ramzan thing.
Yeah.
To the festival, yeah.
That's like a binge. That's like a proper.
Yeah, that's like a planned binge. Everyone does like a.
It's like family sit down and watch this show. Like this is our lives for the next month.
Yeah, I mean, that's what actually happens. Like for the 30 days, this is what happens. Like families gather and they just enjoy the shows that they get, and they have. At least in this month, they have maybe 50 new TV series that come on just in that month. So it's that crazy.
So you're saying like every year, everyone's kind of gearing up like and producing films just for that kind of niche time, like that one time. So it all comes out then.
Yeah, it's just, like 1 month, like crazy amount of shows, 30 episodes, every single show. Like, and nobody can break the format. Like, nobody can come up and say, I just want to make a 10 episode series. That just can't happen. They all have to be 30 episodes. That's the only reason a station would actually buy your series.
It's like you can make 10 episodes, but we need 3 seasons across 3 weeks. So 3 seasons of 10. Man.
Yeah, I think we touched upon this a bit, but just want to know from everyone have you felt a shift, because there's a shift in acceptance of international films, right? We saw it with Parasite in the mainstream media the beginning of this year, and also with other content, like we're saying how Netflix and all these things are influencing world cinema so much and bringing them close to everyone. So just want to get an idea from everyone of how have you felt more acceptance or more representation on the international stage, and also how just generally how popular culture kind of takes from film and vice versa.
Could I answer that, but just answer just a little bit to the left of that, because
Go for
I
it.
think kind of what I said earlier, like, there is, like, I would say yes, but then along with that yes is the connotation of like, okay, it's kind of like the word parasite. I think parasite's kind of good because let's say there's going to be now a higher allocation for international movies from South Korea, Egypt, Italy, India, Nigeria. What I'm afraid of, and I am seeing slightly, is talent not native to there, trying to come in and take those funds, and tell those stories. And that's something that is a bit frightening, because I'm a very big believer that if it's an international film, like, I should not be able to write a movie, that's meant to be set in Nigeria, and then let's say I give the script to Giulia and then she can convert it to be set in Italy and nothing will change. And I feel when you have people that are heading a project that don't understand it, don't have that connection, that's kind of where things can go. So I guess, yeah, for me, that's the one thing that I'm a bit cautious about now that there is a little bit more of acceptance of international productions.
In Italy, there has been another interesting thing. I mean, Netflix opened in Rome recently as well, and that has brought a lot of funding and new opportunities, new TV shows, and a lot of production companies that were 100% Italian and have always been 100% Italian are now, merging with international companies from Canada and abroad. So, I mean, that brings new funds and new opportunities, but there's also there's a thirst for the content that is Italian to look American, or to have a feel of, it shouldn't feel like, Italian cinema or something that comes from here. It should be in Italian with Italian talent, but it should feel like it comes from the US or from the UK or from somewhere else. And that is something that I have a feeling that for us in Italy now, it's hard to do. And only a few people have managed to do so successfully, especially in the TV scene. Because obviously, I mean, the fans are not actually as big as they are in the US. People work in a different way on set, which is not to say that one is inferior to the other or superior to the other. It's just different. And so, yeah, I mean, it's positive for all the opportunities, but I don't know, it's losing a bit of authenticity. I'm not sure that's the right word to use, but yeah, it's losing, what's special about each and every different country, and it's filmmaking industry?
I mean, from my point of view, what I see is that I think there is a bit of acceptance happening, but you kind of feel that this acceptance is sort of like political acceptance. Like, it's just, like, maybe this is sort of like the hype. Maybe that's the new thing, to accept, like, for example, like Rami Malek, he's originally Egyptian and he won the Oscar. Parasite won Best Picture, and a foreign film never won Best Picture before. You kind of feel that this, at least this is how I feel, that this might be a trend, the trend of acceptance, which is sort of okay for it to be a start. And after you check all those new rules that they adjusted and having a film qualify for the Oscar, all of this is good. But on the other side, like, you tend to see like a lot of contrast as well. For example, like, they are making a film about Cleopatra right now. Cleopatra was an Egyptian queen, but who are they starring in it? Who's starring as Cleopatra? It's Gal Gadot. And that just doesn't make any sense. Like, in no way. I mean, like, at least have someone with Arab features. So this is what I'm talking about. I mean, there is acceptance, but till this moment, what I kind of feel, it's just like, it's like political acceptance. And on the other side, they're just, like the contrasting actions that doesn't make sense at all of what's actually going and what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I think keeping it authentic is the challenge, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much to the five of you for joining for this conversation. I, for one, found it super interesting and engaging. Thank you, Omar, Dennis, Giulia, William, and Pranay.